The market woke before the sun fully rose. By the time the sky turned pale gold, the narrow streets were already alive. Voices mixed with laughter, footsteps, and the sharp calls of vendors selling fruit, cloth, spices, and small hopes wrapped in ordinary goods. Dust rose from the ground with every step, hanging in the air like a thin fog. Bright fabrics swayed above wooden stalls, and the smell of fried food drifted through the crowd, warm and heavy. To anyone watching from a distance, it looked like a place of simple life. People came to buy what they needed and left with full bags and tired feet. But beneath the noise and color, the market held secrets. Every face carried a story. Every pair of eyes hid something unsaid. She moved through the crowd quietly as if trying not to be noticed. Her name was Amina, though few people spoke it these days. She kept her head low and her steps steady, holding a small woven basket close to her side. She told herself she was here for rice, oil, and vegetables, nothing more. Just another task in a long list of things that kept her busy enough not to think. But thinking followed her everywhere. As she passed stall after stall, sounds blurred together. The shouts of sellers faded into a dull hum. Amina's eyes looked forward, but her mind was far away. There was a tight feeling in her chest, the kind she had learned to live with. It came every morning and stayed until night, a silent reminder of something unfinished. She told herself she was not running. She had moved to this part of the city for work, for a fresh start. That was the story she shared when anyone asked. But deep inside, she knew the truth was heavier. She had not crossed distance to find a better life. She had crossed it to escape a memory. The market forced her to slow down. A group of children ran past her, laughing, nearly knocking the basket from her hands. She steadied herself and watched them disappear into the crowd. For a brief moment, something painful twisted inside her. She turned away quickly as if the feeling had burned her. She stopped at a stall selling dried beans and reached into her pocket for money. Her hands trembled slightly. The seller spoke, but his words barely reached her. She nodded, paid, and moved on. Everything felt mechanical, like she was moving through the world without fully living in it. As she walked deeper into the market, the stalls grew older and less cared for. The colors faded. The air felt thicker. Fewer people came this way, and the noise softened into a strange quiet. Amina did not plan to be here. Her feet carried her forward without asking permission. That was when she felt it. A sudden chill ran through her, sharp and clear, like cold water poured down her back. She stopped walking. The noise around her seemed to pause, as if the market itself was holding its breath. She turned her head slowly. In the shadow of a broken stall sat a small, rusted cage. The metal bars were bent, and the door hung slightly crooked. Inside was a bird. It was not colorful or loud like the others she had seen in the market before. Its feathers were dark, almost black, with a soft shine that caught the light. It sat very still, watching her with bright, unblinking eyes. The bird did not sing. It did not move. Something about its silence felt wrong. Amina stepped closer without meaning to. The ground beneath her feet felt uneven, as if she were walking into a place where the rules had changed. The cage smelled of dust and old wood. No seller stood nearby. It was as if the bird had been forgotten. Yet it watched her like it had been waiting. Her heart began to beat faster. She tried to laugh at herself, to brush off the strange feeling rising in her chest. It was just a bird. Just a tired animal in a poor cage. Still she could not look away. The bird tilted its head slightly. Amina's breath caught in her throat. Memories stirred, soft at first, then sharper. Feelings she had buried pressed against the walls she had built inside herself. Guilt, fear, regret. She did not know why standing before this silent bird made her feel exposed, as if something unseen had reached into her chest and touched a wound she kept hidden from the world. She glanced around, suddenly aware of how alone she was. People passed at a distance, busy with their own lives. No one else seemed to notice the bird. No one else felt the heavy pull that kept her rooted to the ground. She told herself to leave. Her body did not listen. The bird's eyes were calm, almost gentle, but there was something deeper in them. Not hunger. Not fear. Recognition. Amina took a step back. Her basket shifted in her hand, and a bag of rice rustled softly. The sound felt too loud. Her heart pounded in her ears. This is nothing, she thought. Just a strange moment. But deep inside, another voice whispered a warning she could not ignore. This was not nothing. The market slowly came back to life around her. Voices rose again. Footsteps passed. The smell of spices returned. Yet Amina stood frozen, staring at the silent bird in the broken cage, knowing, without understanding how, that her life had just reached a turning point. She had come to the market to buy food. She was about to leave with something far heavier. And though the bird had not made a sound, Amina felt it clearly. Some secrets do not stay buried forever. Amina finally forced her feet to move. She left the bird behind, or at least that was what she told herself. The market swallowed her again, pulling her back into its noise and motion. But something had shifted. The tight feeling in her chest grew heavier, as if a door she had sealed long ago had cracked open. She walked home slowly, her basket resting against her hip. The path felt longer than usual. Every sound seemed louder, every face sharper. When she reached her small rented room, she closed the door carefully and leaned her back against it. The silence inside pressed down on her like a weight. This was her world now. A single room with pale walls and a narrow window. A bed pushed into the corner. A table with one chair. Nothing on the walls but shadows. It was clean and quiet, and that was how she liked it. Silence gave her control. Silence kept questions away. Amina set the basket down and sat on the edge of the bed. Her shoulders sagged. For a moment, she let herself breathe. She had not always lived like this. There was a time when her life had been full of voices. Family dinners that lasted too long. Laughter that filled rooms. Plans spoken out loud without fear. Back then, she believed life moved forward in a straight line. You made choices and good things followed. She had been wrong. The change did not come all at once. It crept in slowly, like a crack in a wall that spreads when no one is looking. One mistake. One moment where fear spoke louder than love. One decision made in silence. Amina closed her eyes, but the memories came anyway. She had left people behind. Not by distance alone, but by choice. Phone calls unanswered. Letters never sent. Apologies swallowed before they reached her lips. It was easier to disappear than to explain what she had done. Some nights she told herself she had no choice. Other nights she knew that was a lie. Her hands curled into fists on her lap. Guilt lived in her like a second heart, beating when she wished it would stop. She carried it everywhere, even when she smiled at work or nodded politely at neighbors. No one saw it, but it shaped everything she did. She had learned how to look normal. How to keep her voice steady. How to avoid questions about her past. People thought she was quiet, maybe shy. They did not know that silence was armor. Being known felt dangerous. If someone truly saw her, they might see the truth. They might see the moment that changed everything. The moment she chose herself over someone who needed her more. Amina stood and went to the small mirror near the window. She looked at her reflection but did not really see her face. She saw the weight in her eyes. The careful way she held herself, as if always ready to pull back. She was not cruel. She was not heartless. But she had been afraid. And fear, she had learned, could cause just as much damage. She thought of the people she had lost. A relationship that had slowly faded into silence. A bond broken by distance and unspoken words. A chance at forgiveness she never allowed to happen because she believed she did not deserve it. Redemption felt like a word meant for other people. She turned away from the mirror and sat again. Outside, the market noise drifted through the window. Life going on without her permission. Her thoughts returned to the bird. Its stillness unsettled her more now than it had before. The way it watched her, calm and patient, like it knew something she did not want remembered. She shook her head, trying to push the image away. It was just a bird, she whispered to the empty room. But even as she said it, her heart argued back. She had spent years running, not from danger, not from people chasing her, but from herself. From the version of Amina who had failed when it mattered most. From the voice inside her that asked what might have happened if she had chosen differently. For a long time, forgetting had felt like survival. She buried her past under routine and distance. She convinced herself that silence was peace. Now she was no longer sure. That night, sleep did not come easily. When it did, it brought restless dreams. Faces without names. Doors closing. A voice calling her name from far away. She woke before dawn, her heart racing, her sheets damp with sweat. As the first light crept through the window, Amina sat up and pressed her hand to her chest. A strange thought settled in her mind, quiet but firm. She was tired of running. The idea scared her more than she wanted to admit. Facing the past meant facing pain. It meant risking rejection, shame, and loss all over again. But the weight of silence was becoming unbearable. She stood and began to get ready for the day. Her movements were slow, thoughtful. When she stepped outside, the air felt cool against her skin. Without fully deciding, her feet turned toward the market. Toward the place where the silent bird waited. Toward the truth she had been avoiding for far too long. The market looked different in the early light. Fewer people moved through the narrow paths, and the stalls opened slowly one by one. The noise had not yet reached its usual roar. It felt like a space between moments, where the day had not fully decided what it would become. Amina walked with purpose now, though her heart beat fast. She told herself she was only curious, only making sure the strange feeling from yesterday had passed. But deep inside, she knew she was returning because something unfinished was calling her back. She reached the far end of the market where the older stall stood. The broken one was still there. The rusted cage still sat in the shadows. And the bird was still inside. It had not moved from its place. Its dark feathers caught the soft morning light, giving them a faint shine. When Amina stepped closer, the bird turned its head and looked at her again. The same steady gaze. The same unsettling calm. Amina swallowed. "It's just my imagination," she told herself. She reached out slowly, stopping just short of the cage. Her fingers trembled. A strange mix of fear and relief washed over her, as if she had returned to something she both dreaded and needed. That was when the bird spoke. "Amina." The sound was clear, gentle, certain. Her name hung in the air like a blow. The world seemed to tilt. Amina staggered back, her breath catching painfully in her throat. Her heart slammed against her ribs, loud and wild. She looked around, certain someone else must have said it. No one was near. The bird watched her, its beak slightly open. Her mind raced, searching for reason. Birds could mimic sounds. People taught them words. That was possible. That was normal. But no one here knew her name. "How did you?" Her voice broke. The rest of the words never came. The bird tilted its head again. "You still wake up before dawn," it said softly. "Even when you don't have to." Amina's legs felt weak. She gripped the edge of the stall to stay upright. The market around her faded, sounds draining away until there was only the pounding of her heart and the calm voice of the bird. That was not a thing anyone could guess. She had never told anyone about her nights, about the way sleep slipped away from her like forgiveness. Her chest tightened and panic rushed in fast and sharp. "This isn't real," she whispered. "I'm imagining this." The bird's eyes never left her. "You left without saying goodbye," it said. "And you still carry that silence with you." Her vision blurred. Tears stung her eyes, unexpected and unwelcome. That secret lived deep inside her, locked away from the world. The way she had walked away. The way she had chosen silence instead of truth. "Stop," she pleaded, her voice barely louder than the morning breeze. "Please." But the bird did not sound cruel. It did not sound angry. Its voice held no blame, only knowing. "You think forgetting will save you," it continued. "But forgetting has only made the weight heavier." Amina pressed her hands over her ears, but the words slipped past them. Her body shook as fear and confusion twisted together inside her. People began to pass closer now, but no one seemed to hear what she was hearing. She looked at the bird again, desperate for an answer. "What are you?" she asked. The bird did not reply. It only watched her, silent once more. The sudden quiet felt worse than the words. Amina stood there for a long moment, breathing hard. Her thoughts spun wildly. If she walked away now, maybe this would fade. Maybe she would convince herself it never happened. But she already knew that was impossible. Something inside her had been touched. Something she had protected for years had been named out loud. Her eyes moved to the cage. The rust. The bent bars. The way the bird sat calmly as if it trusted her. A dangerous thought formed in her mind. If the bird stayed here, anyone could hear it. Anyone could learn what it knew. Fear surged through her. Her past was not something she was ready to share with the world. She had built her life carefully, brick by brick, around silence. One wrong word could tear it all down. "I'll take it," she said suddenly, turning as a seller approached from another stall. The man looked surprised but shrugged. The cage was old. The bird was quiet. It did not seem valuable. Money changed hands quickly. When Amina lifted the cage, her hands shook. The bird remained still, its eyes soft, almost relieved. As she walked away, the market noise returned, loud and sharp. People brushed past her, unaware that her world had just cracked open. Her basket bumped against her leg, forgotten. Her heart raced with fear, but beneath it was something else. Curiosity. A pull she could not explain. She did not know why the bird knew her secrets. She did not know what it wanted. But as she carried the cage home, one truth settled heavily in her chest. Some things speak not to harm you, but to make sure you finally listen. Amina closed the door behind her with care, as if any sudden sound might break what she was carrying. The small room felt tighter with the cage inside it. Shadows clung to the corners, and the air seemed to hold its breath. She placed the cage on the table and stepped back. The bird remained still, perched calmly, its dark feathers smooth and unruffled. It did not speak. That silence made her uneasy. She almost wished it would say something, just to prove she had not imagined everything. Her heart continued to race long after the market noise faded from her ears. She paced the room, rubbing her arms as if cold. Every few steps, her eyes returned to the cage. "Why me?" she asked quietly. The bird did not answer. Hours passed that way. Amina cooked and ate without tasting her food. She sat on the bed and stared at the wall. Every sound outside made her tense, afraid someone would knock, afraid the bird would speak at the wrong moment. As evening settled in, the light in the room softened. The shadows grew longer. Then the bird spoke again. "You keep your phone turned face down," it said, "so you don't have to see the name you are waiting for." Amina froze. Her gaze dropped to the small table where her phone lay, screen against the wood. She had never told anyone that habit. She barely admitted it to herself. The hope that one day a message would appear. The fear of what it might say. "How do you know that?" she whispered. The bird shifted slightly on its perch. "Because you never stopped caring," it said. "You only pretended you did." Her chest tightened. Images rushed back. Late nights staring at her phone, the ache of waiting, the quiet disappointment when nothing came. She had told herself it was over. That she had moved on. The bird peeled that lie away with ease. "You stayed when you should have left," it continued. "And you left when you should have stayed." Tears slipped down her cheeks before she realized she was crying. She wiped them away angrily, but more followed. Each word felt like a finger pressing into a bruise she had hidden for years. "I did what I had to," she said, though her voice shook. "You did what felt safest," the bird replied. "Not what was kind." Amina sank onto the bed. Her strength drained away, leaving only the weight of memory. She remembered the nights of doubt, the long silence that followed her choice, the relief that came with distance, and the regret that never left. The bird did not rush. It spoke slowly, gently, as if unwrapping something fragile. "You learned to smile without joy," it said. "To work without rest. To live without being seen." Each sentence stripped away another layer of protection. She saw herself clearly now, how she avoided closeness, how she kept her answers short, how she stepped back whenever someone tried to step closer. The most painful part was not the truth itself. It was realizing she had always known it. "You think punishment is what you deserve," the bird said. "So you punish yourself every day." Amina covered her face with her hands. A quiet sob escaped her, one she had held in for far too long. She felt exposed, as if the bird could see straight through her skin into her heart. "Stop," she begged. "Please." The bird fell silent. The quiet that followed was heavy but different. Not sharp like before. It felt like standing still after a storm, surrounded by damage but alive. Amina lowered her hands and looked at the cage. The bird's eyes were gentle again, filled with something that looked like understanding. "You don't know everything," she said weakly. "No," the bird replied. "But I know the parts you buried to survive." That scared her most of all. If the bird could see not just what she did but why she did it, then it knew her in a way no one ever had. That kind of knowing felt dangerous. It meant there was nowhere left to hide. Her thoughts raced. If the bird kept speaking, what else would come out? What deeper truths lay beneath the ones already exposed? She realized with a sudden chill that the bird was not just naming her past. It was peeling it open feather by feather. And each truth it revealed left her more vulnerable than the last. As night settled fully outside her window, Amina understood something she had tried to ignore since the market. This was only the beginning. Whatever the bird was, whatever it wanted, it was not finished with her yet. And she was no longer sure she wanted it to stop. The next morning, Amina woke with a dull ache behind her eyes. For a moment she forgot about the bird. Then she heard the soft scrape of claws against metal, and memory rushed back in all at once. She sat up slowly and looked toward the table. The cage was still there. The bird watched her, silent and patient. Amina's first feeling was fear. Not sharp panic, but a deeper, heavier kind. The kind that came when something hidden had been seen and could not be unseen. She dressed quickly, her movements tense, her thoughts racing. She tried to go about her day as usual. She went to work, greeted people with polite smiles, answered questions with careful words. But the bird's voice echoed in her mind, and every interaction felt different now. At work, she noticed how often she avoided eye contact. How quickly she changed the subject when conversations turned personal. These habits had once protected her. Now they felt like cracks others might notice. When her phone vibrated in her pocket, her breath caught. She pulled it out slowly. A name appeared on the screen, one she had not seen in years. Her hand shook. She did not answer. She let the phone fall silent again, her heart pounding painfully. The past was reaching for her, and she did not know if she was strong enough to face it. That evening, when she returned home, the bird spoke before she even set down her bag. "You felt your chest tighten," it said. "You thought the world was about to fall apart." Amina dropped her keys. "You don't get to talk about that," she snapped. The bird did not flinch. "You are afraid because being known has a cost." She laughed bitterly. "You think I don't know that?" She paced the room, anger rising like heat. "People leave when they know the truth. They judge. They decide who you are based on one mistake." "You already decided that for them," the bird replied. The words hit harder than she expected. She stopped pacing and turned toward the cage. Her chest burned. "You don't understand what it took to survive," she said. "What it cost me to keep going." "I understand that you survived," the bird said softly. "But you stopped living." A knock sounded at the door. Amina froze. Another knock followed, firmer this time. Her heart raced as she moved toward the door, each step heavy. She opened it slowly. A woman stood there, older than Amina remembered, her face lined with time and worry. The sight of her stole the air from Amina's lungs. It was someone from her past. Someone she had left behind. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The silence between them was thick with everything that had never been said. "I heard you were here," the woman finally said. Amina nodded, unable to find her voice. The room suddenly felt too small, the walls closing in. They sat across from each other, separated by years of distance and hurt. Words came slowly, carefully. Polite at first. Say. But beneath every sentence lay an ocean of pain. Amina felt the bird's presence behind her like a weight. She feared it would speak, feared it would expose her in front of someone she was not ready to face. The woman's eyes searched her face. "You changed," she said quietly. Amina swallowed. "I had to." "Or you chose to," the woman replied, not unkindly. After she left, Amina collapsed onto the bed. Her body shook with silent sobs. Old wounds had opened and they bled freely now. The bird spoke again, its voice low. "You see? The truth does not destroy you. It asks something from you." "What does it want?" Amina whispered. "It wants honesty," the bird said. "And honesty is never free." Amina looked at the cage, tears streaking her face. She felt torn between two unbearable choices. If she silenced the bird, if she walked away, destroyed it, or set it free, she could keep what little peace she had built. But it would be a false peace. A shallow one. If she listened, truly listened, she risked losing everything. Relationships. Comfort. The careful distance she had learned to survive on. Yet beneath the fear, a fragile hope stirred. What if being known did not end her life, but finally began it? Amina closed her eyes and took a deep breath. The cost of truth was high. She could feel it already. But the cost of silence, she was beginning to understand, had been higher all along. That night, the room felt heavier than ever before. The air pressed down on Amina's chest, making each breath slow and careful. She sat on the floor with her back against the bed, her knees pulled close, her arms wrapped tightly around them. The bird's cage rested on the table above her eye level, quiet and still. For once, the silence did not comfort her. She knew what was coming. "You're tired," the bird said at last. Its voice was softer than before, almost gentle. "Not from work. Not from fear. From carrying what you never laid down." Amina closed her eyes. Her throat tightened. "I don't want to talk about it." "You already are," the bird replied. Her body trembled. A single tear slid down her cheek, followed by another. She wiped them away, angry at herself. She had survived years without breaking. Why now? "Because you won't let yourself forget anymore," the bird said, as if reading her thoughts. The memory came slowly at first, like a shadow stretching across a wall. Then it rushed in with painful clarity. She saw the old house again. The narrow hallway. The door at the end that she had not opened when she should have. She remembered the sound of her own heartbeat, loud and fast, drowning out everything else. "I was afraid," Amina whispered. "I didn't know what to do." "You knew," the bird said. "You were just afraid of the cost." Her hands clenched into fists. "I was young. I thought someone else would fix it. I thought time would make it better. Time had done the opposite." The night returned in sharp pieces. The argument. The raised voices. The silence that followed. Someone waiting for her to come back. Someone who trusted her to stay. And she hadn't. She had walked away instead. Not far at first. Just enough to breathe. Then farther. Then completely gone. I told myself it wasn't my fault, she said, her voice cracking. I told myself they were stronger than they looked. The bird's voice was steady. And when they weren't? Amina broke. A sob tore out of her chest, raw and uncontrolled. She bent forward, pressing her forehead to the floor. The pain she had locked away burst free, flooding her body. They needed me, she cried. And I chose myself. The words echoed in the room, loud and unforgiving. She remembered the call she never returned. The message she deleted without reading. The knock on her door that she ignored because she was too tired, too scared, too full of excuses. When she finally heard the truth, it was too late. I thought if I stayed away it wouldn't hurt as much, she whispered. I thought silence would protect everyone. It protected no one, the bird said gently. Her chest ached as if something inside had cracked open. She had spent years punishing herself without ever naming the crime. Now it stood before her, clear and undeniable. She had abandoned someone when they needed her most. That single choice shaped everything that followed. The way she pulled away from people. The way she avoided love. The way she believed she did not deserve forgiveness. I don't know how to live with it, Amina said. I don't know how to make it right. The bird was quiet for a long moment. You cannot undo the past, it said finally. But you can stop running from it. She lifted her head slowly and looked at the cage. Her eyes were red and swollen, her face streaked with tears. She looked broken, but for the first time she also looked honest. I see their face every time I close my eyes, she said. I hear my name the way they used to say it. And every morning I wake up knowing I failed. The bird leaned forward slightly. Guilt kept you alive, it said. But it also kept you trapped. Amina's breathing slowed. The storm inside her began to settle, not because the pain was gone, but because she had finally faced it. I thought I deserved to suffer, she said quietly. I thought this was my punishment. Suffering is not the same as responsibility, the bird replied. Those words landed deep inside her. For the first time, Amina understood that her silence had not been a form of respect or regret. It had been fear wearing the mask of humility. By hiding, she had denied others the chance to heal, and denied herself the chance to change. She pushed herself up from the floor and sat on the bed, exhausted. Her whole body ached, but there was a strange lightness beneath the pain. The bird watched her closely. This is the memory you refuse to face, it said. Because facing it means choosing what comes next. Amina nodded slowly. Tears still filled her eyes, but they no longer blinded her. She did not feel forgiven. She did not feel free. But for the first time in years she felt awake. And she knew, deep in her bones, that the hardest part of her journey was no longer behind her. It was just beginning. The days that followed were strange and heavy. Amina could not stop thinking about the bird. It was no longer just an odd creature she had brought home. It had become a presence in her life, quiet yet commanding, like a shadow that reminded her of every truth she had avoided. She watched it carefully each morning. The way it preened its feathers, the tilt of its head, the glint in its eyes, it was almost human in understanding. Almost too aware. Something about it unsettled her more than the words it had already spoken. It felt like it existed for a purpose, one she could not yet comprehend. She began to notice small details about the bird. The way it seemed to listen even when she was silent. The way it followed her gaze without moving its body. And most unsettling of all, the way it sometimes stared at her as if recalling something only it remembered, something tied to the past she had tried to bury. One evening, as twilight crept over her small room, Amina decided she could no longer ignore it. She approached the cage carefully, her hands hovering above the rusted metal. "Who are you?" she whispered. The bird did not answer immediately. It simply shifted slightly on its perch, then let out a soft, melodic chirp. A sound almost human in its rhythm, yet ancient. It was a sound that carried memory. Amina shivered, as if the note itself had brushed against a secret part of her soul. Then it spoke again, its voice calm and deliberate. "I am not just a bird." Amina froze, her heart thundering. She had been expecting explanations, but not this. "What do you mean?" she asked. "I carry what has been lost," it said. "What has been hidden. What has been forgotten but refuses to disappear." The weight of the words pressed down on her. She wanted to step back, to deny what she was feeling. But something compelled her to stay. The bird's presence was magnetic, and despite fear, she wanted to know. "I don't understand," she admitted. "I brought you home as if you were just a curiosity. A strange thing I could control. But you speak truths I cannot hide from. You cannot hide from them, the bird said softly, because they are not just yours. Amina frowned. Not mine? What do you mean? The bird's eyes gleamed in the dim light, and for a moment she felt as if it were peering straight into her memories. I am tied to what you left behind. To the regrets that shaped you. To the silence that protected and punished you. Amina's throat tightened. The voice held no accusation, only clarity, and somehow that hurt more than anger ever could. Why me? She asked. Why do you know what you know? You have carried more than most, the bird said. And yet, even with the burden you sought to survive. That choice drew me to you. Some truths wait for those who are ready, or desperate enough, to face them. The words settled uneasily inside her. She remembered the lives she had touched and broken. The people she had left behind, the promises she had failed to keep. How had one bird known all of it? How could it know her better than she knew herself? The bird tilted its head as if sensing her thoughts. I was never meant to be a pet, it said. I exist where memory lingers. I appear when silence grows heavy and the past is ignored. Amina felt a chill. Memory lingers? She echoed. Are you some kind of spirit? The bird remained calm. Call me what you will. Spirit, messenger, conscience. My form is a bird because it is easier to carry the weight of what is remembered in a small, fragile shape. My purpose is not to judge but to reveal. To guide. To force the hidden to the surface. She stared at it, the rusted cage suddenly feeling too small. The bird's calm certainty unnerved her, but there was no malice, only relentless truth. So all this, what you've shown me, this is your purpose? She asked. Yes, it said. And you must decide what to do with it. You cannot ignore it. You cannot bury it. The past will follow in ways you cannot yet see. Amina's hands shook as she sat down heavily on the edge of the bed. The bird's words brought back more than her own regrets. They stirred shadows of other lives, other choices, and other voices she had never allowed herself to hear. Faces of people she had wronged floated before her eyes, each one accusing silently, yet also waiting. You are tied to them, the bird said. And they are tied to you. You cannot walk away from the consequences forever. She closed her eyes. She had thought she could. She had believed distance, silence, and avoidance could protect her from facing herself. But the bird, this strange, impossible being, had undone all of that. It was not just a witness to her life. It was a reminder of everything she had refused to acknowledge. Amina opened her eyes again and looked at the bird. It did not speak further, but she felt the weight of its gaze, patient and unwavering. She realized that its calm was not neutral, it was deliberate. It demanded attention, reflection, and reckoning. And then, slowly, she understood. The bird was more than a creature. It was a bridge. A bridge between her and the life she had abandoned, the truths she had denied, the people she had hurt, and the choices she had made. Its presence was not just a warning. It was a call. A call to face what had been hidden for too long. Amina felt a shiver run through her, not from cold, but from the inevitability of it all. The bird was not here for her comfort. It was here to make her confront herself. To guide her toward what she had avoided for years. To make her see that silence and avoidance could no longer protect her from the consequences of her actions, or from the possibility of redemption. She swallowed hard and whispered almost to herself, I understand now. The bird tilted its head, a faint glint in its eyes that seemed like approval. Then it returned to its quiet perch, still and patient as if the hardest work, the work of forcing understanding, had been done for the moment. Outside, the city carried on in its usual chaos, oblivious to the small room and the small bird within it. But Amina knew that her life had changed. She could no longer run from the past. She could no longer hide behind silence. And somehow she knew that the bird, small and fragile though it appeared, had always been meant to bring her to this moment. Some truths, she realized, would find you, even if you spent years running. And some messengers, no matter how unlikely, were impossible to ignore. The room felt smaller than ever. The evening light filtered through the thin curtains, casting long shadows that stretched across the walls. The bird perched calmly in its cage, watching her as though it understood the turmoil twisting inside her. Amina sat on the edge of the bed, her hands clenched tightly, her mind a battlefield of fear, doubt, and rising resolve. She had come far since that first morning in the market. She had faced memories she thought she would never see again. She had let the bird speak truths she had buried for years. And yet she felt no lighter. In fact, the weight seemed heavier now. Heavier because the truth had a way of forcing action, and action demanded courage she wasn't sure she possessed. The knock at the door came suddenly, sharp, breaking the tense silence. Amina jumped, her stomach twisting. She knew, even before opening it, who it might be. One more person from her past. Someone who could pull the carefully patched walls of her life apart. She swallowed, steadying herself, and took a slow, shuddering breath. "You can't hide forever," the bird said softly, its voice calm, measured. "You will have to choose." Amina closed her eyes, letting the words settle. They were not a threat. They were a statement of fact. Her choices were no longer between comfort and avoidance. They were between fear and responsibility, between hiding and facing the consequences of her actions. Her mind raced. She thought of the people she had hurt, those whose lives she had abandoned or disrupted. She thought of the fragile threads of relationships she had left behind, now fraying beyond repair. Every choice to stay silent had seemed protective at the time, but the price had been steep. And now the cost was clear: confrontation or continued exile in her own fear. She could destroy the bird. She could ignore it. She could pretend the past no longer mattered. That path would bring safety, quiet, the familiar numbness she had grown used to. But she knew deep down that it would also mean living a lie, a life half alive, perpetually haunted by what she refused to acknowledge. Where she could listen, truly listen. She could open the doors she had closed, face those she had abandoned, and risk judgment, anger, and pain. She could speak the truths she had never dared to voice. It would be terrifying. It would hurt. It might shatter the fragile stability she had built in this small room, in this careful existence. But it might also bring something she had not dared hope for: redemption. Her fingers traced the edge of the table where the cage rested. The bird tilted its head slightly, as if urging her to decide. Its black eyes held no malice, only expectation. The pressure of its gaze was almost physical, pressing her toward clarity she could not ignore. Amina's breath came in shallow bursts. "And if I fail?" she whispered. "What if they hate me? What if I am too late?" "You cannot fail if you try," the bird said gently. "Silence is failure. Avoidance is failure. Choosing to act even when it frightens you is the only path to change." The words settled over her like a tide she could not escape. She thought of the faces she had left behind, the ones she had imagined forgiving her only in dreams. She thought of the weight she had carried alone, the sleepless nights and trembling mornings. And slowly she realized something. The fear she felt was not just for herself. It was for the lives she could still affect, the damage she could still repair. Her chest tightened. Courage was not the absence of fear. It was acting despite it. She had feared confrontation for so long that she had forgotten the truth of it. Fear had shaped her life. Fear had silenced her. Now it was time to see what lay beyond it. A soft wind drifted through the window, stirring the curtains. Amina looked at the bird and felt something shift inside her. She was no longer the woman who had walked past the cage in the market, paralyzed by the unknown. She was someone who had begun to face herself, and that was the first step toward facing the world. "I will do it," she said quietly, more to herself than to the bird. Her hands unclenched. Her back straightened. Her voice, though trembling, carried the weight of decision. "I will face them. I will face the truth." The bird chirped softly, almost approvingly. It did not speak further. It did not need to. The choice had been made. Amina felt a strange calm begin to settle over her, mingled with the fear that had not yet left. Courage was not comfortable. It was not the sudden lifting of a burden. It was a decision to carry that burden openly, to bear the consequences rather than hide from them. She packed a small bag with necessities for the journey ahead, not for travel but for confrontation. The simple act of preparation made her feel strangely steady. Each movement was deliberate, a rehearsal for the courage she would need in the hours to come. Before leaving, she looked one last time at the bird. Its black eyes held a quiet intensity, a reminder that she could not take this path lightly. But there was also a message of hope. She could be brave. She could face the storm. The city outside was darkening, lights flickering on one by one. Shadows stretched long across the streets. The market, the roads, the houses, all of it seemed indifferent to her internal struggle. Yet Amina knew that nothing outside could match the challenge she now faced within herself. The choice was no longer theoretical. It demanded action. It demanded courage. And she would meet it, step by step, word by word, with every trembling heartbeat she could summon. She took a deep breath and stepped toward the door. The bird watched as she left, silent once again, but its presence lingered like a promise. The journey forward would be difficult, but it was the only way she could finally reclaim herself. For the first time in years, Amina felt the weight of fear balanced by the promise of possibility. And as she closed the door behind her, the world seemed larger, filled with danger and hope in equal measure, waiting for her to choose. The choice had been made. Now the courage to follow through was hers alone. The air felt impossibly heavy as Amina approached the old house. Every step toward it seemed to echo with the weight of years she had tried to bury. The streets were quiet, the kind of quiet that presses against your ears and reminds you of things you have avoided. Her heart pounded in her chest, but she forced herself to keep moving. There was no turning back. Not now. The key turned stiffly in the lock, a final barrier between her carefully built silence and the truth waiting inside. She drew a deep, shuddering breath and pushed the door open. The familiar scent of dust and old wood hit her first, and then the empty rooms, holding ghosts of laughter and conversations that had long since faded. She called out softly, almost hesitantly. I need to speak." Footsteps came from the back of the house. A figure emerged, older, lined with years of worry and quiet strength. The eyes that met hers were a mix of recognition, caution, and sorrow. Amina's throat constricted. "I didn't know if you would come," the voice said, quiet but firm. "I had to," Amina whispered. I couldn't live with the silence anymore." They stood for a long moment, neither moving, both feeling the weight of unspoken years. Amina's mind raced with what she should say, how she could explain herself, how she could ask for forgiveness without expecting it. "You left," the voice finally said, "when I needed you most. Do you know what that did to me?" "I know," Amina said, her own voice trembling. "I've known every day since." Her eyes filled with tears as the floodgates opened. The past she had carried alone for so long spilled out in words she had never dared speak. Every regret, every moment of cowardice, every choice to turn away. The figure before her listened in silence, and with each confession, the tension inside Amina both released and deepened. The room seemed to pulse with emotion. Shadows stretched along the walls like memories themselves, heavy with accusation, yet oddly liberating. Amina felt as though every corner of the house was pressing in, urging her to speak, to be seen, to finally stop running from herself. I thought I was protecting you," she continued, voice breaking. "I thought distance would spare us both pain. But it didn't. It only made it worse. And I was afraid. Afraid to face what I had done." The figure's eyes softened, but the hurt remained. "Afraid?" they repeated. "You think that excuses the years of absence, the loneliness, the fear I carried alone?" Amina flinched but did not look away. "No, it doesn't. Nothing excuses it. I was wrong. I've carried it every day, and I know now that the only way forward is to face it. To face you. To face everything I left behind." The silence that followed was thick but not suffocating. Amina felt as if she were standing on the edge of something enormous, something she could not yet name. And then, slowly, the first words of forgiveness began to emerge, not in grand declarations, but in the quiet acknowledgement of shared pain. I don't know if I can forgive you," the figure said. "Not yet. But I can listen. And that is a start." Amina's chest ached with relief and sorrow. It was not perfection, not absolution, but it was something far more valuable than the years of silence. It was recognition. She was seen, fully and painfully, and the consequences of her choices were finally laid bare. The bird, still perched quietly in the corner of her mind, felt almost like a presence in the room, though it was miles away in her apartment. Its voice, had it spoken, would have said simply, "This is why I came." Tears streamed freely down Amina's face now, unrestrained, cleansing, raw. She had faced the memories she had refused to face, the people she had avoided, and the truth of herself that she had long denied. Every sob, every shiver, every whispered apology was a step toward something fragile and new. "I am sorry," she said again, voice breaking. "I can't undo the past. But I want to make what's left count. I want to try." The figure looked at her, eyes softening further, the tight lines of hurt beginning to ease. "Trying is more than many ever do," they said quietly. "It's more than I expected from you." Amina nodded, swallowing hard. She felt the weight of her own shame shift slightly, becoming lighter, not gone, but manageable. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to imagine a life where mistakes could coexist with effort, where regret did not define her entirely, and where truth, no matter how painful, could lead to renewal. The confrontation had not erased the past. It had not removed the consequences. But it had broken the silence, shattered the armor she had built, and opened the possibility of understanding. That, the bird had known all along, was the purpose of its presence. Not to punish, but to guide her to this point. As she left the old house, stepping into the quiet night, Amina felt something shift within her. The fear remained, but it was tempered with clarity. Courage, she realized, was not the absence of fear, but the act of moving forward despite it. Somewhere deep in her chest, she felt the first stirrings of hope, fragile but undeniable. And she knew that the journey was not over, not even close, but for the first time she did not feel like running. She looked up at the stars, letting the night air fill her lungs, and whispered softly, "I am ready." And in that moment, though silent and unseen, the bird's purpose had been fulfilled. It had led her through the shadows of her past to the light of confrontation, to the beginning of true reckoning, and to the possibility of redemption. For the first time, Amina understood. Truth, however painful, could be survived, and perhaps even embraced. The city was quiet that morning, the kind of early hour when the world still held its breath. Amina sat by the window, sunlight spilling across the floor, highlighting dust particles that floated lazily in the air. The bird's cage rested on the table beside her, its occupant motionless, as though it had grown heavier with the weight of what had already been spoken and done. She ran her fingers along the cage bars, a mixture of gratitude and lingering fear twisting in her chest. It had been weeks since the confrontation, weeks of reckoning, reflection, and fragile attempts to rebuild connections she had once abandoned. And through it all, the bird had been there, a quiet witness and impossible guide. She glanced at it now. Its black eyes were steady, calm, almost serene. There were no words. The bird did not move, did not chirp, did not speak. Its silence was deliberate, and Amina felt the meaning in it like a weight settling into place. The silence was a gift. For the first time in years she felt that her heart could breathe. The truth had been faced, the consequences acknowledged, and the people she had hurt had begun to see her. Not perfectly, not without pain, but fully and honestly. She had apologized where she needed to, she had made amends where she could, and she had finally forgiven herself for the mistakes that had haunted her. She remembered the bird's first words, the ones that had shattered her world in the market. How it had spoken secrets no one should know. How it had peeled back years of carefully constructed silence. At first she had feared it, even resented it. But now, sitting in the soft morning light, she understood the truth. The bird had not been there to punish her. It had been there to guide her, to force her to see the self she had hidden, the life she had avoided, and the courage she had always possessed but refused to summon. A gentle breeze moved through the window, stirring the bird's feathers. Its eyes seemed to gleam faintly in the sunlight. Amina realized she did not need its words anymore. She had found the courage within herself. She had faced the memories, confronted the people, and allowed herself to be known. The bird had fulfilled its purpose. "Thank you," she whispered softly, her voice barely above the quiet of the room. The bird remained still, as though acknowledging the gratitude without words. And in its silence, Amina felt the final lesson sink deep into her bones, that redemption was not a grand act, but a series of small, deliberate choices. That facing the truth, however painful, was the only path to freedom. That being known could hurt, but it could also heal. She rose from her chair and walked to the cage. Slowly, carefully, she opened the door. The bird did not move. It did not need to. Amina understood that its presence would remain with her, in memory, in the quiet courage she now carried, in the awareness that she could not, and would not, hide from herself again. She reached in and gently lifted the bird from the cage. Its wings fluttered softly against her palms, and for a brief moment, it looked at her, eyes steady and almost human. Then it took flight, arcing gracefully toward the open window. Sunlight caught its feathers, illuminating each one in a brilliant glow before it disappeared into the morning sky. Amina watched until it was gone. The room felt empty but not lonely. The bird had left, but its lessons remained. The silence it left behind was not absence. It was the space she had earned to live freely, to act bravely, to carry both mistakes and triumphs without fear. She closed the window and leaned against the sill, letting the warmth of the sun sink into her skin. Her heart still ached with the remnants of guilt and grief, but there was a lightness too, a fragile, exhilarating sense of possibility. She had faced the past. She had spoken her truths. She had opened herself to others, and to herself. The phone on the table buzzed. She glanced at it, expecting hesitation, dread, maybe avoidance. But she reached for it calmly, pressing the green button without fear. She spoke, her voice steady, honest, human. For the first time in years, she did not need to shield herself from her own words. After the call, she set the phone down and exhaled deeply. She felt the quiet hum of life settling around her, ordinary yet miraculous. Each sound, the rustle of leaves outside, the distant murmur of voices in the street, the soft light on the floor, felt brighter, clearer. The world had not changed, but she had. Amina walked to the mirror on the wall, her reflection catching her attention. She saw the same face, but something had shifted. Her eyes, once clouded with fear and regret, now held depth and clarity. There was still imperfection, scars of the past remained, but there was also courage, acknowledgement, and the quiet strength of a woman who had faced herself fully. She smiled, small and tentative but real. It was not a triumphant smile. It was not a perfect one. But it was hers. And for the first time in years, that was enough. Sitting back down by the window, she allowed herself to simply be. She did not need to run. She did not need to hide. The bird had come, spoken, and left, but its silence was the final gift. The reminder that she had the power to continue speaking her own truths, carrying her own burdens, and living in the light of honesty and courage. The past, with all its weight, still existed. But it no longer defined her. She had faced it, embraced it, and allowed herself to move forward. And in that, she discovered something extraordinary. The possibility of peace, fragile yet real, earned through courage, honesty, and the willingness to be known. Outside, the city stirred into life, oblivious to the quiet transformation in a small room. And Amina, for the first time, felt the world was hers. Not to hide from, not to fear, but to live within, fully, bravely, and openly. The bird had gone, but its lessons remained. And in its absence, Amina found her own voice, her own strength, and the silent, powerful truth. She had survived the past, confronted it, and discovered the courage to live with it. The bird would not return. It did not need to. Its purpose was complete. And in that quiet, empty space, Amina finally understood what it had always meant. Some secrets once faced give way to freedom. Some truths once spoken give way to peace. And some courage once summoned changes everything.